Hi, this is Briandarcyjames, and I have the great honor of sitting with Ittai Shapira, who is here to talk about his new piece called The Old Man and the Sea, based on the Hemingway story. And I just thought we would talk a little bit about how it came to be, how people can hear it, and maybe just a little bit about how you wrote it and what inspired it.
Basically, I was on tour in Florida, and the hub was Key West, and I was really struck by the colors and the sort of mix of the sort of Caribbean and U.S. feel. You know, Cuba being right there, all that kind of made a real impression on me.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't think I was going to do anything about it necessarily.
So you didn't set out to write a piece about the old man?
No, I was performing another piece when I was there, so
Okay.
I was kind of busy with that. And when I came back to New York, I basically heard sort of this melody in my mind. I'll just play it real quick. It was and it sort of kept coming back and kept coming back, and I thought there might be something there, and then later on, I had sort of this melody pop up. And right around that time, that sort of this was kind of brewing, the BP oil spill happened, and I didn't think I was the right person to write anything about necessarily. Of course, I was following the news very closely. I haven't been fishing even once in my life, but I've befriended a family there that had to move away. So that really kind of struck me.
The story became personalized to you.
Yeah, and then Key West, Hemingway, all these elements. I read the book and I was really struck by it. And what I learned from the book is that there's a lot of similarity between being an artist and being a fisherman. And I'm kind of curious from your perspective on this. One thing that really struck me is the fisherman's sort of. He was very, very respected in his community. He had a very long fishing career, and when he first set out to sea, he couldn't catch anything. Then he had the sort of the biggest catch of his life. And you've done so many things. You have this sort of amazing career. I'm wondering if you can sort of relate to the.
Well, I think the tenacity of being a solo entity going out into the abyss to kind of make your living or make your statement. And your livelihood depending on that is, I can relate to the idea of an artist just trying to be true to themselves and what they want to say, and oftentimes feeling like they're swimming in the middle of the sea as they do it. But it also reminds me of the idea of an overnight sensation taking 20 years to happen. A lot of times you don't necessarily hear about the career that occurred before. A lot of people get to see or hear what it is that the particular person has done. So it is a vocation to spend your life to do what you love.
Right, it's sort of real passion and so much more than a profession.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, in a way. And when it took the fisherman in the story 84 days to sort of make his catch. How long does it take you to prepare for a big role?
Well, typically you get about 4 weeks to rehearse a Broadway musical, and about the fifth week you start going into the tech process, so you're assimilating the lights and the actual physical production, and also the music, which is a huge aspect to it, obviously. So you kind of work towards that final time of being in front of the public. But for the first 4 weeks, you're rehearsing with everybody in a barren room with tape on the floor, and so it's very bare bones, and ideally it's very creative and collaborative, and a chance to really see what doesn't work,
right,
in order to find out what does. Do you find that to be true in your writing process?
Yes, but it's done, I think, very, very differently. I mean, if I have melodies that I think are sort of really. If I basically can't help but write them, I write them. Mm-hmm. And then I listen to a lot of different types of music. I mean, in this case, Shakira, Rihanna, some of the old classical masters, Debussy.
Now that's a sentence I wouldn't necessarily hear all that often. Rihanna and Debussy being in the same sentence as inspiration for a classical composer such as yourself. Do you think that's common?
It might be a little extreme, but I think it's more common these days than one would think.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of classical composers, writing today are actually trained percussionists, guitar players. They've played in orchestras and in bands. So I think there's less of a separation in that way.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, part of how this particular piece came to be is a new theater at Miller College, Long Island, commissioned it. So it was sort of a real act of basically a bold statement for them to say, okay, we're going to do this. We had the premiere last Friday, actually. And it was part of a series we called Innovative Classics. The idea behind it is to actually have young composers, young performers, writing and performing today, and to reach out to a broad audience without actually crossing over or anything like that, but to sort of show that it's sort of alive, communicative here now today.
Do you feel that? Do you have a sense of that changing in terms of people's interest for people like yourself who are composing and playing classical music, magnetizing it for maybe a younger generation or a group of people that hadn't necessarily been interested before?
I think so. I mean, I think there's sort of there's an image problem with classical music, which most people think of it as sort of music written, 150 years ago, by people who are always dead.
Right.
Being performed by old people for older people.
Right.
And that's not at all, actually. I think some of these pieces became true classics in the sense that, they were so amazing that we forgot about the context in which they were written. I think the other side of the coin is that, we are living at a time of change and crisis, and I think that calls for more creativity in terms of the projects that are being put on and also how they are presented. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a good thing.
Absolutely.
And I think it might be why, I feel just extremely fortunate to have the theater back me up and also a record company, Chancellor Records in England. They put on sort of unique projects, and it's very rare these days to have a violinist and composer record for violin and full orchestra.
As well as, if I'm not mistaken, on this particular album, there are more. There's 2 orchestral pieces that you've written.
Right. The first one is kind of how it manifests how I got attracted to this overall sound world. It's called Concerto Latino. Mm-hmm. For that one, I was listening to a lot of jazz and Shapira and some Latin classical composers, Goliath, Defaya, etc., etc. I listen to Broadway musicals. I listen to everything.
I love hearing that because it is such an unexpected reference point in terms of what my perception of classical music is. I wouldn't necessarily expect to hear that being an influence, but the truth is, and I should know better, because music is music, and it's not compartmentalized. It's all the same language. Obviously, it's different. Classical is different than pop, is different than bluegrass, etc. But it all is the same essentially.
Right. There's good music and there's good music and there's bad music.
Right.
I have to say I've been very pleasantly surprised in the last few years. Most of my life I've been performing at a quote unquote standard classical settings. When I met and started to do some work, I was either sort of benefits or joint events or whatever with some people outside the classical world. I'm just thinking Brooke Shields, Glenn Close, Donna McKechnie, sort of lucky to meet you. I was amazed at how much they actually were interested in, how much they liked it. Mm-hmm. I was always preparing myself for a speech of, this is really nice, give it a try. And I was kind of really pleasantly surprised by how much people liked it. I was also, I wouldn't say surprised, but I realized that quite often you need to be able to explain things.
Do you mean in terms of
to people?
Uh-huh.
I love food. I love eating in restaurants. I still want to know which restaurant I'm going to. I want to know some background. I love dance. It always helps me to figure out like what are the dances about, where are they from, who wrote them. Same goes for musicals, same goes for an opera, same goes for movies. So it shouldn't really be any different in classical music.
I love doing the same thing. I love finding out what it was that sparked a particular song, or what was the backstory, or what the composer was thinking. Or this is based on when I stubbed my toe the other morning, or this is a tragic story in my family, or whatever the case may be. It always does shed new light on it and makes me appreciate the song in a deeper way. But it doesn't necessarily. You don't necessarily have to have that.
No, you don't, because I think truly great art will communicate anyway. It doesn't have to mean the same thing for everybody. I did use some very specific quotes from the book, but I didn't write them down in the music or the program notes when I play it in concert. I wrote it on the CD so people can get an idea of what it was. But I think if people want to imagine a completely different part of the story, that's absolutely fine.
Yeah. That's the amazing thing about music to me, in terms of the specificity of something that is written down and has quantized value for each particular note, and yet when it's played, it takes on a whole other life in terms of how it's perceived, how it's felt, how it's received, and that's it's an interesting thing from going from something so concrete, and then that becomes something so I suppose elastic, or has just all kinds of life beyond the quarter note and the half note register.
Right,
so
but I'm assuming it's the same thing for you when you perform a certain character in the same role. It probably goes through all kinds of changes.
It's true, and the text, I suppose the metaphor would be to kind of use the same metaphor would be using the words that the playwright has written as the notes, and whatever that particular actor or performer, how they imbue their how they see that particular word, or that the context of the words is what defines it ultimately. And then there's another level of how it's received. So what you intend may not necessarily be what someone receives in terms of how they see it or how they feel it.
Right.
Which I love.
Yeah, I mean, we have no control over it.
Exactly.
And I mean, like the fisherman, I think if we, if we have to do it, I think in order for us to have to, it has to have some relevance to us and to other people. And I think all these things are it's about human interaction. And that's what makes it so wonderful.
Yeah. Tell people where they can hear the two pieces that you've written, the name of the album. Just spell it out again so people can get a chance to listen to it.
Sure. Well, the name of the album is The Old Man of the Sea, just like the book. And it can be found on champshillrecords.co.uk. More information about innovative classics can be found at Madison Theatre, New York.
And they're the ones that commissioned the piece.
They're the ones that commissioned the piece, yeah.
Oh, good for them. Ittai, thanks a lot.
Thank you very, very much.
Good luck to you.
Thank you.
All right.